Welcome to Wrasslin Raw! All right, you're listening to Wrasslin Raw, the podcast that takes you back to when Raw became war and Attitude ruled. Thank you for joining us. You're here with Ryan Arico.
There's all the other Wrasslin Raw co-hosts, and then there's me!
Joe Gimateo.
Bartlett, I said your language.
Well, damn it, son. I'm the one and only Jason Bartlett, and we're going to examine WWE history. One episode of Raw is War at a time. In this episode of Wrasslin Raw, we're going to be talking about the Raw that aired on December 8th, 1997. This Raw was recorded at the Portland Civic Center in Portland, Maine, and features Jim Ross, Jerry the King Lawler, Michael Cole, and Kevin Oh My God Kelly on commentary. Are you guys ready?
I'm ready.
Ready.
All right, then. Let's get into it. You might be interested to know that tomorrow night there's going to be an encore of the D-Generation X pay-per-view. We will try to remember throughout the evening to remind you of that.
Assuming they'll give us, no recap tonight on that event. Yeah.
I think we'll end up with enough stills to make, a flip book.
Yeah. Well, our listeners should take note of that because we probably won't mention it again throughout the rest of this episode, but they sure as hell did. My God. And we definitely kicked off the night with still shots from that event, including an extremely blurry photo of Steve Austin stunning a referee. It was like one of those Sasquatch photos. As well as a close-up of some brass knucks. You know, the important things that might entice a young man to shell out for the encore. What wasn't enticing, however, was Vince McMahon marching down to the ring area at the start of things. I was concerned that he may be joining commentary.
No chance!
The only thing, though, that made me happier than fans booing Vince, which they did quite loudly, was the sound of Kevin Kelly's voice on commentary. Like sweet butter. Michael Cole, on the other hand, sounded like a little kid chiming in and trying to join in on the adults' conversation. Vince kicked it off by laying the problems of the world at Stone Cold Steve Austin, the amount of people Austin has assaulted, and the crowd loved it when Vince mentioned that he himself has been a victim of Austin. Vince highlighting Austin's actions at the pay-per-view was pretty ridiculous too, and throughout this, Vince didn't sound angry. He sounded like a salesman, like he was still stuck in commentary mode. The bottom line here, though, is that Vince wants Stone Cold Steve Austin to defend his retained IC title against The Rock on Raw tonight, and that triggers the glass breaking. Steve doesn't like to be ordered to do things, apparently. Who would have guessed? But here, in what I thought was a pretty nice little milestone, Vince asserts himself as the owner of the WWF, and in that one moment, he is officially in charge. He is getting heated and moving away from the salesman and more towards Mr. McMahon. Austin asks the crowd if they'd like to see Vince McMahon get his ass whipped, and the crowd is indeed agreeable to that. Quite loudly so. Vince took umbrage at Austin's language, prompting Austin to cuss repeatedly in response. And Austin ended this whole thing saying that he'll consider wrestling tonight, but if he has to come back out again, he might go after Vince. He might go after Jim Ross. He might go after an official. Nobody will know. And the three-man booth broke down the evening for us, and that was followed by Jerry Lawler versus Sonny in the final of the Karate Fighters tournament. We all forgot about that, or at least I did up to here. Jerry Lawler wins, but it comes to light that the tournament final had been tainted by sex and bribery. That's just so foreshadowing. Forcing officials to revoke Lawler's championship victory and award it to Sonny, like revoking a CEO status. And so, guys, what a way to kick this episode off. We're finally getting some Mr. McMahon in the ring and on the microphone. And at first I was a little bit put off, but I found myself needing to remember that, like so many others that we've talked about here, Vince isn't up to 11 yet. Mr. McMahon as a character is still at that 7 that guys tend to start at, but I will be damned if this was not a welcome sight. Joe, what did you think of the way Raw started tonight?
Yeah, really good observation. Yet another important character moving forward that's not quite up to 11 yet. There's different versions of Mr. McMahon, I think, and this is the first version of it.
Mark 1, yeah.
Yeah. Later we're going to see him do the corporation and all that stuff. And, here he's still kind of feeling things out, but man, is he doing a great job at just being unlikable. And that's what he is, in real life. So it's not hard, I'm sure. But this crowd is immediately booing. I mean, that's what a great way to start the show. Vince McMahon strutting out there and the crowd just booing their heads off. And then the glass breaks, and then they get fired up, And if you want to see Vince McMahon get his ass whipped, give me a hell yeah. I would have yelled so loud that I would have blown my vocal cords out right on this first segment. So I thought this was great. And also the karate fighters, again, whoever is doing this Vin McMahonican character, I could listen to it and watch it for hours and be entertained. I love it.
To agree with what you both said, we're getting the start of Mr. McMahon here. He's not completely focused in on that character quite yet, but we're getting the start of the what is going to be our life as a wrestling fan for the next couple years. He's antagonizing Stone Cold, and Stone Cold's being the rebel, and that's starting here right now. That is a huge milestone. Obviously, McMahon is going to get better and better at this. Stone Cold is pretty much at prime Stone Cold right now. He's already there. We just got to wait for Vince to catch up, and he's going to get there pretty soon. We get even Vince calling or referring to The Rock as the people's champ. He called him that in this. That was kind of cool to hear as well, talking about milestones. And when Stone Cold comes down, he just does a great job of what Stone Cold does best, just spitting fire on the mic and getting the crowd riled up. And they did. They loved everything he said, and so did I. It was a great segment. We also learn before we go to the Karate Fighters tournament that you could enter to win a chance to win the Austin 316 pickup truck. So that's pretty badass, right? I wonder who won that out. I wonder if they'll tell us, or to learn if that truck still exists somewhere, like the old Pimp My Ride cars.
Wow, yeah.
Where they're at now, But
do we know, is it the one that got beat up by the Nation, or
probably
is it
not.
a new one?
It just said in Austin. It's probably just a new truck with vinyl stickers,
the
slapped
decal,
on it. Yeah, right. The one thing about the Karate Fighters tournament here, they show us the black and white footage as to why Jerry Lawler is going to have the title revoked, but it's a repeat of the exact end of the tournament last time. He did the same thing. He put gum on the foot, and the title was reversed and I think given to Sable last year. But
well, shame on you. I pretended like that never happened.
The ending was a little bit of a repeat, but still enjoyable, I guess.
Well, now he did try to slip that referee some money, too, this year.
Yeah, they added a couple extra ways of cheating this year, but I think the gum on the foot was just the footage from last year. I don't even think they reshot that.
Probably. Just imagine, though, 1997 would have been a little too early for us, but as a teenager in high school, if you had won that contest, whipping into Laurel High School's parking lot in the Stone Cold pickup truck.
Oh, yeah.
Buried in puss immediately, I'm sure.
Yep. Blasting the glass-breaking music as you drive in.
All right, enough fantasizing about what could have been, and it could have been fucking awesome. Let's go to our first match of the night. The Godwins, with Billy Gunn and the Road Dogg versus the Legion of Doom, ends in a no contest in 3 minutes and 10 seconds. Things started with Henry and Animal, and I hate to say it, but it didn't look good. This is another example of an utter lack of anticipation. Regardless of what else is going on in the tag team division, the Godwins stopped being relevant when the LOD came back and broke Henry's neck. I hate to put it that way, but the Godwins never recovered whatever momentum they had going into that angle, and it just still remains here. Whatever they had, it died with that vertebrae in Henry's neck. Phineas looked terrible, and Henry, I'm sorry to say, looked pretty rusty here. But then the lights went out, and Kane came out to the ring, hellfire and brimstone. Through happenstance, Hawk was left alone to take the brunt of Kane's anger, and Hawk repeatedly tried to get back up, ended up taking 2 tombstones and a choke slam to keep Hawk down. Once it was clear Hawk would stay down, Kane and Paul Bearer exited. Road Dogg and Billy Gunn came in to kick Hawk around, but Animal was able to get up and get a chair and defend them, and that's more or less where things ended, and we quickly moved away to the next segment. So the most I can say about this is that it was cool to see Kane, and that's it. Joe, what did you have on our first match here?
Well, I agree with you. It was nice to see Kane. This is interesting that it seems like this is how they are writing off LOD to go on their little hiatus. So I guess that's an interesting way to do it. It's a good way to do it, I think, because you're still putting over Kane. So yeah, I liked that. The other thing I liked was the South Park shirts that Billy Gunn and,
I knew
and Road Dogg. I mean, South Park premiered in 97. That's when it debuted. And I was obsessed with South Park during this time period, and I actually had a lot of those shirts that came out during that time, so I popped for that. That was nice nostalgia there. Michael Cole, he really needs to work on his commentary here. He's kind of, he's in the way. Yeah. This three-man booth is not working for me, brother, but I know they're going to, the second half is going to be just the King and JR, and I wonder how long they're going to keep doing this, first hour, second hour split. Hopefully not very long, because this commentary is not very good. JR is kind of buried in the background, and I don't like it.
Kind of an agreement again with you two here. This was nothing special and nothing much to really like here, to be honest. The wrestling was, I guess, just forgettable. And Bartlett, as you pointed out, the Godwins, man, I don't know. They're just, every time I see them anymore, I'm just like, oh yeah, they're still around, I guess. It's just, they have zero heat or push. Like, just no one cares about them. They're not coming out with cute little goats anymore. And nobody gives a fuck. But to see Kane come out, that was great. I thought he was going to clear the entire ring, which would have been pretty hilarious if he just cleared out both of these teams. But we end up him just focusing there on Hawk. Joe, you pointed out, my God, Michael Cole. When Kane came out, his acting was worse than Sable, and that's really saying something. The way he tried to act shocked and scared, he was like, oh my God, I have seen this on television, but never live. It's Kane. It was just like, it sounded so terrible. Hawk, he put up a valiant effort here. It took 2 tombstones and a goozling to finally keep him on his back. And Joe, as you said, this is going to be, I'm guessing, their send-off in, a decent way. You have this machine who you've been building up, and you say, it takes 3 of his finishers to finally keep Hawk down. And I assume injure him. That's going to be the talk, and then they're just going to be gone. But that part was fine, and I suppose a decent way to send Hawk and LOD off into the sunset. But the match that we had before it was nothing special at all, that's for sure.
Yeah. So let's just keep moving away from that, because the show did. They very quickly moved to our next match. Dude Love defeats Billy Gunn with the Road Dogg by pinfall in 3 minutes and 40 seconds. The Unnamed Outlaws just stayed out after that last segment, and Road Dogg got up in there with the microphone to insult the Legion of Doom, LOD calling them the OLD. I thought that was clever. And the Road Dogg said that now that they are the tag champs, singles action's next, and they challenged anybody to come out and have a match with Billy. So cue that backbeat. Dude Love was a welcome sight, with the Road Dogg saying, "We said 1 guy, not 3. Road Dogg joined commentary then and did phenomenally well. I mean, the action in the ring was pretty good, but Road Dogg was fucking amazing. Talk about a breath of fresh air over there where Michael Cole had been stinking it up. Duder wins with a double arm DDT, but that only inspired the Road Dogg to get in the ring and crank Dude Love with a steel chair. The assault continued after that. They laid the tag belts on Dude's face, and Billy Gunn did what started off as a flying leg drop, but ended as a flying baseball slide straight into the side of Dude Love's face, and that's where things wound down. So yeah, I mean, the match was good, but Road Dogg impressed the living shit out of me here on commentary. I loved it. Ryan, what'd you think of this match?
Yeah, I love this whole segment, starting with the Road Dogg and Badass just in the ring addressing the crowd after the whole last segment with Kane. And I think confirming that LOD's gone, they start to sing na 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 goodbye. So I'm guessing that's the final send off for them. And then I laughed when they asked for, someone to come out and then said we didn't ask for 3 because of Mick Foley. I thought that was a good little joke he threw in there. And, as you said, that continued. His wittiness continues on the mic when he goes to commentary. He does a very good job, and this match was solid as well. Billy Gunn and Dude Love put up this isn't a pay-per-view match or anything, but a very solid match. And then you have Dude Love, you kind of expected was going to win this one. He nails the double arm DDT and picks up the victory. The stuff that happened after was pretty interesting to see, because the main thing I thought about, they're assaulting him after the match, is I'm assuming this is leading into the Mick Foley, Terry Funk team up. Will be have the small feud with the Outlaws here. Yeah. I'm assuming that's what this is building up towards. So I'm definitely excited for that.
Yeah, this was my nice surprise of the show, I think.
Yeah.
Not that I should really be that surprised, but I can't remember the last time I liked a Billy Gunn match this much. I think that this was, it's not a match of the year candidate by any means, but I really enjoyed this match. I thought that this was the best that Billy Gunn has looked in the ring in quite some time. And Dude Love did a really good job here of gradually building up that crowd during this match, and I thought it was great, and I loved Road Dogg on commentary too. Road Dogg is a sports entertainer, and he put it on display during this match just from his commentary. So I thought that was good. And the Outlaws, they're not called the Outlaws yet, but they are doing a good job of building up to that name, and they're doing a good job with just getting more heat every week. So I thought this was a nice surprise. I really enjoyed this.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And it has been really neat to see that build up with them, because at the beginning, I don't know, I can't remember if you guys thought this way, but I was skeptical at first, I knew they would end up being the stars that they'll become, but it was a little shaky there at first while they were still figuring themselves out. But man, what a quick turnaround. What has not been a quick turnaround, however, is getting over Bret Hart. There's going to be some kind of video package titled The Destruction of the Hart Foundation in the near future. And that kind of makes me feel bad for Owen. I know they're doing this thing with Owen and Shawn Michaels, which is the correct story to tell given everything that's happened, but it feels like Owen is still getting buried under the topic of his brother. They think they're using it as like a transition way to turn the story to Owen, but they're leaning on Bret's name way too much with this.
You're going to enjoy the news segment later. I have some good stuff for you later.
Consider my taint tickled. We got a commercial after that for that Buried Alive gift set.
Yes.
Nice.
That you got for Christmas last year, Ryan.
Yep. And if anyone listening out there wonders what we're talking about, if you follow us on Instagram, we did a scene before last year's WrestleMania special that we did, where we made a couple scenes from that Buried Alive.
Featuring the Executioner.
Yes.
They did not mention that in this commercial, though. They made sure to hide that fact. Didn't want to harm those sales, pal. After that, we got a quick video promo from The Rock with the Nation of Domination. The Rock was front and center there to address the situation with Stone Cold Steve Austin. Just a little extra storytelling there to keep that on our minds as we move throughout the episode. And that was followed by highlights from the Light Heavyweight Championship match and some post-match footage of Brian Christopher being a sore loser. He was alone and screaming about being robbed, like in this hallway, beating on the walls. And I kind of felt like this was like a missed opportunity, because once or twice he beat on a door labeled locker room, and I really thought somebody was gonna step out and threaten him or tell him to knock it off or something and maybe kickstart a new program for him, but no dice there. I was wrong to be hopeful about Brian Christopher, because after that whole deal, we went to the ring where Jim Cornette was waiting to do an interview with the new light heavyweight champion, Taka Michinoku. Taka came out, and we found out that good old JR had been teaching English to Taka, words such as slobber knocker. And just as Cornette was about to introduce Taka's first challenger for that title, Jerry the King Lawler came out, and I lost all hope for where this was going. Lawler revived his xenophobia here to plenty of crowd pops, with Taka finally calling Lawler a jackass in pretty decent English, I might add. But then Cornette does introduce Taka's first challenger, some guy in a mask called El Unico, and of course it's Brian Christopher. And Christopher and Lawler start taking turns hitting Taka with pile drivers, one after the other, by God, and things fizzled out from there. Oh man, so guys, it seems like the same problem that haunted the light heavyweight tournament is going to continue to haunt the division, and that problem is called the Son of Lawler angle. Ryan, what did you think about The Rock's brief promo, and then also these new developments in the light heavyweight division?
The brief promo by The Rock, it was a very good, modern Rock promo, what we've been getting out of him recently. And again, at the very end, we very briefly get him raising the eyebrow. He's been kind of teasing that as a thing the last couple times we've seen him. The footage of Brian Christopher backstage at the pay-per-view flipping out, he then towards the end starts saying, "You came into my country and took my belt." And then it was kind of clear what angle they were going to be going with here. We go into Jim Ross teaching Taka English. That was probably the highlight, to be honest with you, seeing JR explain what a slobberknocker means and then having Taka say slobberknocker. Once we get back to the ring, it was clear Brian Christopher from the body that it was Brian Christopher under this mask, and the King starts going into, he's sick of the Japanese taking our jobs, speaking of South Park.
Yeah.
That's pretty much the whole angle. The immigrants, he busts on the fake Mexican that is his son, and we learn that that's it for the light heavyweight division. There's two people. Just like the tournament, where it was a 8-person tournament made for 2 people, that's still all we really have here as we continue the Brian Christopher and Taka feud here. I'm not looking forward to it, I gotta say.
Yeah, this was a really good show up until this point, I think. This is where things started to flush down the toilet. There's still that little nugget. But the flushing is starting. And, even with the Rock promo for me, I didn't think it was that great. I mean, it was fine, but I perk up when I see the Rock. And I don't know, this almost seemed like a very canned promo from him. But yeah, the quick eyebrow was nice to see. I mean, then we get into all this Brian Christopher stuff. First off, nothing against Jim Cornette, but I'd rather see Sonny out here as the ring announcer.
Yeah, at least would have something to do. Wow, what's going on?
Yeah, he wasn't really a ring announcer, but in that role, I think Sonny would have been really good there. But yeah, Jerry Lawler coming out, and it's confusing because he's trying to play the old school, like racist type, patriotic heel promo type thing, but the crowd likes Taka, so it's not going to work. It's just a little confusing and not very interesting and just outdated. It's almost like this is their attempt to not bore me anymore with Taka, but they're going to have to give me a little bit more than this because this was not very entertaining.
Yeah, I couldn't have put it better myself, so let's get the hell away from it. The less of this angle in my life, the better. Hey, maybe we can move on to something better.
Yeah, maybe.
It's always possible. Let's find out with our next match. Flash Funk defeats the Kurgan with the Jackal by disqualification in 2 minutes and 36 seconds. And Ryan, correct me if I'm wrong, but Flash Funk, he was a former Jobber of the Week, wasn't he?
He was. Sad enough for him, and that will be shown here tonight as to why he is now descended to Jobber territory. But yeah, Flash Funk was our Jobber of the Week back on our October 13th, 1997 episode.
Thank you. So Flash got jobbed out not only in his entrance, but also by getting bumped to talk about what DX did to the Hart Foundation over in England months ago, as well as what happened in Montreal a month ago. I liked that we got a nice panoramic view of the empty floor seating surrounding the ring. I don't think you could have called this one a sellout, or maybe people just heard the term jackal and hit the latrines and the beer carts. But I couldn't blame people for not buying a ticket if that's what happened when you have shitbags like the Jackal coming out to new music and being followed by Kurgan, much to everyone's confusion as they were expecting Flash Funk to have a match against the Interrogator with the Truth Commission. Rather than address that confusion, JR made sure to run off some future dates of WWF house shows. The Jackal joined commentary, and the first thing Michael Cole said was, "We know him as the Interrogator." And the Jackal responded that the chains of corporate something have been lifted. Frankly, I gave up trying to understand what was being said there when the Kurgan started roaring and yelling and straining his neck there, as soon as he got in the ring, really. The Kurgan ends up applying the claw directly to the forehead, applied directly to the forehead, and getting a victory through a fucking submission.
They're going to make an Iron Claw 2 movie. It's going to feature Kurgan.
God.
That one will be up for many Razzies instead.
They'll get that guy that played Hopper in Stranger Things to play Kurgan, I bet.
Well, they could just get Kurgan to play Kurgan.
Yeah, Kurgan's an actor.
He became an actor.
Huge movies, yeah.
Yep.
That's true. Well, that ended the match, but not this segment, as the Kurgan wouldn't let go of Flash Funk's forehead, so Recon and Sniper came out, still wearing their Army Halloween costumes, and they tried to stop the insanity. Referee Mike Chioda even went so far as to reverse the match decision because the Kurgan wouldn't let go. I mean, he was declared the winner through submission, and it got reversed, because we can do that now, I guess. And things ended with slapping and maniacal laughter. Joe, I hated this. I had to take a break from the episode after watching it, and I don't know how much more of it I can handle. What did you think of it?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the silver lining here is this is the lowest point in the show.
We were heading down last match, and now we've hit base bottom.
Yeah, we're fucking rock bottom at the sludge here. And Kurgan comes out as Kurgan, and I thought, okay, well, maybe the Truth Commission is dead. You know, that'd be good. But then these two clowns, Recon and Sniper, show up later. So I don't know what's going on there. And the Jackal's still there, and now they're doing this cult-like angle with him, and it's not working for me, brother. Yeah, this is a guy who has been on our TVs for weeks now, the Interrogator, and just all of it. Again, we're pretending like it never happened, like he's just this new guy named Kurgan, I guess. I don't know. It's just really terrible.
The main question here is changing his name from the Interrogator to Kurgan going to make him a capable wrestler? Because, I mean, like, who cares what you fucking call him? He looks like an enormous, awkward, fucking feet stuck in cement piece of shit in the ring. You know what I mean? Like, there's nothing going to fix that. And all I could think of through this entire match was, I am so happy they canceled his program with The Undertaker. I mean, could you imagine how fucking bad it would have looked? I mean, you know, I said it last time, but it would have been another Giant Gonzalez fucking joke that we still talk about to today because of how bad it would have been. And the Jackal obviously doesn't help things when he gets on commentary. This fucking finish, they tried to do a modified choke slam. It's a head slam. He grabs them by the face and then slams them, but because there's not the neck and the easy way to help it out like there is with the choke slam, it looks terrible. This was just fucking stupid. Poor fucking Flash Funk. I mean, that's the other thing I could think about here. I mean, could they make me care any less, you know, by putting these worthless fuckers in front of my face? You know, as you said, Joe, it is the bottom of this episode.
Bring the Funkettes back, for crying out loud.
Yeah, infinitely more charisma than the Jackal has, which I think this is probably the most amount of screen time the Jackal has had with in-ring focus on him, and just terrible. Fucking terrible. He is the wrestler to Michael Cole's commentator here in this episode.
Yeah, here in the episode, sure.
That's really selling Michael Cole pretty short.
In this episode.
Definitely not a fan of Michael Cole, but he's had longevity at least. The Jackal's so fucking forgettable, and we are finding out why.
Yeah. All right, let's move it along. We got next some more review from last night's pay-per-view. Surprise, surprise, including a post-match interview with Ken Shamrock. Michael Cole was there, and he set it up, and Kenny knocked it down. I have to say, this was probably one of the best, most genuine wrestling promos from Ken Shamrock we've had so far. It was good that it was short. Not enough time there for Ken to fuck things up. He kind of just rode his adrenaline through it, and that's going to serve Ken well, I think. So that's what ended the first hour of Raw, and D-Generation X kicked off the second hour, coming out to a visual editing style that only looks extreme, rather than making anything or anyone within it look good, thus defeating the point. I really, really hate that they're still doing that.
Remember, that's extreme with an X.
Yes, it is. Triple H, speaking of extreme, Triple H starts off addressing Sergeant Slaughter, saying that Triple H was too much man for both Sergeant and Mrs. Slaughter. I enjoyed that. Shawn Michaels addressed his victory over Ken Shamrock before moving on to Owen Hart's run-in at the end of that match last night. And it should be noted that the whole time that they're doing this spiel, there's a card table set up in the ring behind them. There's chairs, drinks, a bottle of Jack Daniels. China was standing there looking amazing, shuffling cards in her brand new China Syndrome t-shirt.
Hell yeah.
That some kids out in the audience were wearing too. I thought that was pretty fucking cool.
Yeah.
Shawn went on to compare the Hart family to an enormous piece of shit that you can't quite flush completely because there's one nugget that just won't go away, and point blank calls Owen Hart a nugget, which surprised the hell out of me because I did not remember the nugget thing happening this soon.
Yeah.
DX, they're going to sit in that ring and play poker until Owen Hart comes out to get flushed once and for all. China makes a suggestion in Shawn's ear that they play strip poker. And I have to say, I love the fact that we have not heard China's voice. She only whispers in ears, and that just like heightens the mystique around her. It's such a great way to keep her interesting.
Makes her like the muscle in a like Bond movie or something.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah.
Like a true henchman.
Right.
But then we heard the sound of motorcycles, and the moment was ruined. So before we move on, we'll pause it here. We had that quick promo from Shamrock, and then an extended but equally entertaining promo from DX. And I thought this was a great way to start the second hour. Joe, what did you think?
Yeah, excellent. We're getting into some stuff that I really, really remember. Like, I remember this whole thing with the strip poker.
Yeah.
This is the start of it. And the China Syndrome shirt is fantastic. So I loved seeing that. I liked hearing JR say Shawn Michaels looks a little distressed when he was talking. That's a good way to put it. And just Jim Ross, he's so appalled by DX and just sells it so well. I love it. Like, what does strip poker have to do with the WWF?
Try.
Yeah, try. You kidding me? Try. Yeah, so this is really good stuff. Again, we're really getting into stuff that I definitely remember watching like over and over again, and this was really exciting to see. And then, the Nugget promo, I don't remember it being this early either, and I feel like I remember Triple H was the one that was saying it, but I guess it was Shawn Michaels here, so that was good to see here that we're getting into the Nugget stuff with Owen.
Starting with Shamrock, I thought he did a pretty solid job here. Also setting up the Royal Rumble, upcoming, big pay-per-view, saying he's going to have to go through 29 other people, and that's fine. He'll do it to get to Shawn Michaels again. So that was cool. One part you didn't talk about, but I just wanted to bring up only because I recently heard this story in a YouTube interview with D'Lo Brown. So you have to guess it's about Ahmed Johnson. But in between the Shamrock interview and the D-Generation X coming out, they gave us that commercial we've seen a few times where they call us not athletes, whatever, that whole thing. Well, during it, Ahmed Johnson makes the claim about how, he played football for the Dallas Cowboys in this. And
There's zero evidence.
yes,
Right?
D'Lo Brown in the interview just buries him, saying he said he looked for, and then so did I. There is no evidence that he ever played professional football with the Dallas Cowboys. The only evidence online is him claiming it. Like even Wikipedia says he played football for the Dallas Cowboys, but it's only referencing him quoting that. There's no link to the roster from the time that he did. So maybe he tried out for the Dallas Cowboys and didn't make the team.
Failed miserably.
Right. And he's embellishing that into played, because he definitely played college football and was a, college football name. He was a good college player, but there's zero evidence he played football for the Dallas Cowboys. I just wanted to bring that up.
Yeah, I trust your research, and I trust D'Lo Brown, the CPA, for sure, on his analysis that is bullshit.
My God, what a fat and oily rabbit hole to get sucked down.
Anyway, to move on to the DX segment, I loved this too. This was excellent. The whole smelly, smoking, disgusting turd and comparing it to the Hart Foundation, and then Owen Hart being called the Nugget. I remember that it was DX that came up with it, but yeah, I wasn't sure who exactly said it or when it happened for sure, but it was great to see the Nugget name being coined here that is gonna live, from now on, basically, that Nugget name. So I definitely, like you, Joe, though, remember this strip poker segment. It's also one of those scenes that you always see in recaps of DX and their history. You always see this strip poker game because it's a pretty memorable thing until the DOA come out, which kind of ruin everything.
Hey, speaking of, let's go to our next match. Los Boricuas. This is Miguel Sasquatch Perez and Jose Estrada with Jesus Castillo and Savio Vega defeat the Disciples of Apocalypse, this being 8-Ball and Skull, by pinfall in 4 minutes and 45 seconds. For the record, Degeneration X moved out of the ring to the bottom of the entry ramp. They still had that table set up with everything on it, and they also had some stogies fired up by this point. Obviously, I didn't give a single shit about the people in the ring. I'm not sure that I was really supposed to, with the real stars playing strip poker at the outside of the ring area. The camera work tended to enforce that thought. And so, rather than being entertained by the match, I was left waiting for something interesting to happen. Spoiler, it didn't. Savio ended up interfering with a love tap from a 2x4. What the fuck is it with people and these just ginger taps with the 2x4, man? He hit that to the back of one of the Nazi fuck brothers' knees. Nothing of value was lost. And 3 people sitting at a table were more interesting than this tag team match. Ryan, I bet you popped your ass off when you heard those motorcycles fire up there, didn't you?
Well, I mean, as I started in the last segment, they ruined the end of a very good segment to lead into their own. That's how bad they are. They could ruin things that even happened before their match just by the stench of them. And that's exactly what happened here with DOA versus Los Boricuas, which, what is this? The 90th time we've had this in the last fucking 3 months? I mean, how could we see this fucking boring ass match this many fucking times? And it doesn't make any sense because clearly commentary had no focus on this match either. The crowd didn't. I mean, this was all about DX playing strip poker, and so the people that booked it don't care. The announcers don't care. Why are we getting this match so often? But it ended in some fashion, and I think that now makes the factions 49-49, an even split. So I'm sure we'll get that tiebreaker anytime soon now.
Can't wait. Yeah, I'm glad that there was a strip poker game to distract us from this terrible match, and that is the focus, is the strip poker game. So I did enjoy watching that and hearing the commentary about it, and that's pretty much it.
Yep, less said the better. Moving on. After a commercial break, DX were back up in the ring. Everything's still set up. Their drinks present, their little chip caddy. Apparently, China had a good enough hand to cause Shawn to strip down to his boxer briefs. Give me that bulge.
I have to imagine Vince was in the gorilla position so he could get the best view of it back there.
Attitude.
The Headbangers ended up coming out, though. Supposedly they had a match scheduled. They didn't, but they flipped the card table, and DX instantly destroyed them, with Triple H putting Thrasher through that card table. It was not gimmicked. The Headbangers then got thoroughly humiliated by a man in his underwear. Shawn Michaels jiggled his bulge for the camera at one point, and you could hear Vince McMahon's orgasm rumbling through the arena.
And the King let out a, whoa.
Yeah.
But then Owen Hart finally came out through the crowd and attacked Shawn before quickly exiting through the crowd again. And that was the payoff here. Shawn got what he wanted, and we have the beginnings of what could be a huge babyface push for Owen Hart if they play this right. Ryan, what'd you have on this short segment?
It was pretty funny. Shawn stripping down to his underwear and just everyone's reaction to it. And Shawn, I think, definitely had to be torqued up on something because he basically went into stripper mode. He's jiggling his package. At one point when he laid up on the top ropes, just the way he was holding his legs, I have to think those people in the front row were getting a bit of a show.
The ball bag was out.
Yeah. Vince McMahon, he probably borrowed the Dave cam and was using that out in the crowd to catch a home video. This was attitude for sure. But I did love seeing Owen Hart. You know, he quickly comes in out of nowhere, spears Michael to the ground, gets in a couple good licks, and then rolls out through the crowd. So good way to keep up this story with Owen and further the WWF into the Attitude Era.
Yeah, I like that the poker game made its way back into the ring there. And one little thing here that I really enjoyed was that they had it so that China kept winning. Like China didn't even remove a shoe during this entire thing, and I thought that was hilarious. This is attitude. This is the type of shit that they want to do to push the censors a little bit. And this was a really good start to the hour.
Started off with the bulge.
The jiggling the balls was fantastic.
Yeah, and it wasn't just like a casual thing.
No,
he reached down with
it was
the full hand, grabbed hold of it, jiggled it around.
Right at the hard camera.
Yep.
Yeah.
Helicopter in it.
Upshot of that. Yep. Let's move it along to our next match. Jeff Jarrett defeats Vader by countout in 46 seconds. The only thing more bizarre than Jeff Jarrett's vinyl ring robe is his fucking entrance music. None of it's good.
Ever heard.
None
Then
of it.
there's me.
Yeah. It sounds like a shitty like 80s sci-fi music with just that horrible voiceover.
Yeah.
Yes, he
It's
looks
bad.
like he would be a combatant in The Running Man.
Yeah. Yep.
And just whenever I thought things weren't looking good, though, I spoke too soon, because as soon as the bell was rung, Luna, my main squeeze, came out, leading the artist formerly known as Goldust on a chain. Goldust was wearing a black trench coat, and as soon as they got to ringside, Goldust opened the coat, flashing Vader, which caused Vader to chase after him up the entryway, through the curtain, and out of this match. And that's what got the victory for Jarrett. JR lets us know that Jeff Jarrett is now 2-0 since his return to the WWF. That was kind of a shocking and sucky fact to hear. If they want to get Jarrett over as a heel, I think it's working, because I think I don't like him. Joe, I'm pretty down on the way Jeff is getting booked here. I don't know why I remember him being better than this. Maybe that's something we just need to get to or build towards. I don't know, but if there's anybody that can maybe put a positive spin on this for me, it's you. So what did you think of this match and what they're doing with Jarrett overall here?
Yeah, well, I have a hard time getting over the outfit and that entrance music. It's just so bad. But you mentioned the 2-0 thing, so that's kind of the underlying thing here. Maybe they're building up to something with that. And, we know cheating forward that we're going to get that Don't Piss Me Off Jeff Jarrett, which is going to be good, but I don't know when we're going to get there. So I don't know how much more we're going to have to put up with here, but hopefully not a lot. Goldust coming out here. I'm really liking what we're seeing from Goldust and Luna. The only thing I fear there is I'm fearing a Sable feud between her and Luna, and man, that's really going to ruin this good stuff we have going with Goldust and Luna, so I'm just going to enjoy it while it lasts.
Yeah, Jeff Jarrett coming out, the very first thing I noted is his bizarre entrance music. I don't even really know how to describe it, to be honest with you. And then we don't really get a match. Vader comes out and he's distracted by who I have been very much enjoying, Goldust and Luna, who flashes Vader. That causes him to chase Goldust up the ramp to what I assume is his third death. I don't know if we're going to see the footage maybe next week of what they did with him there. Maybe they dropped an anvil on his head as he came in. I don't know what Looney Tune way they're going to murder him this week, but I hope we get to see that. That's really my main takeaway is I want to see next week what happened to Vader when he went backstage.
Yeah, I agree. That's a lot more interesting than what's going on with Jeff here or what could have happened with Jeff and Vader. I wouldn't necessarily be offended if it was maybe Goldust and Jeff instead of Vader, but whatever. Like you said, Joe, I'll just take the good times while I can get them here.
It seems clear, though, that Dustin did break his arm because there was a cast you could see still on his wrist. Okay. And that was the original thing from like 6 weeks ago. Remember?
He's an invalid.
You're right. That was like the start of the whole thing where he wouldn't help in the pay-per-view match. So I think he has a legitimate injury. They're just trying to work their way through the storyline.
Yeah. And damn glad they have Luna there to help that, because if it weren't for her, I don't know how well this would be working.
Yeah.
Speaking of things not working, let's go to our final match of the night. Salvatore Sincere defeats Mark Marrow with Sable by countout in 46 seconds. I feel like a broken record saying that finish. Sal Sincere, Ryan, he was a jobber of the week too, wasn't he?
He was back on November 25th, 1996 episode of ours. We went over Sal Sincere, and in that segment, this segment was mentioned.
Before the match got started, Michael Cole caught up with Butterbean after that match that he had against Marrow. This was footage from the pay-per-view last night, and when asked about that match, Butterbean replied, "This wasn't a boxing match. I'm not stalking Sable, I'm stalking you. I'm going to find you in a dark alley, and you're going to be mine."
Admitting that he was stalking Sable. Yeah. He says, I won't be stalking her anymore. I'll be stalking you. So
there was no Sable present at the start of this match, so that was an interesting turn of events. But of course, the crowd wanted Sable. That didn't stop Marrow from grabbing a mic and giving us a promo, going so far as to call Sal Sincere a jobber, a jabroni, and then he points out that Sal's name isn't even Sal, it's Tom Brandy, and that it's a stupid pizza delivery boy gimmick that he's been saddled with, and that he ought to be ashamed of himself. So then, addressing the lack of Sable, Marrow says he's going to bring out someone who has never done anything worthwhile. That's a paraphrase on my part. And Sable comes out wearing a burlap potato sack. Marrow calls her his little spud, and I popped. But just as I was entertained by Marrow being such a douchebag, Sable ripped off her burlap sack to reveal a body that's more silicone than woman. Wearing some kind of lingerie or outfit or bikini, it emphasized the ridiculous proportions of her body, causing Marrow to lose his mind. And of course, no matter how hard he tried to cover her up, she kept getting uncovered. This was like a fucking vaudeville act. And Marrow escorted Sable up and out of the ring. The jabroni, Sal Sincere, tried and failed to get a Sable chant going. What a cuck. And that's it. That's how Sal fucking Sincere gets a victory on Monday Night Raw, everybody. I don't understand the appeal of Sable. I try not to harp on this any more than I have to, but like parts of her body look skinny and old. And then others look like brand new, like they just came off the fucking factory line. And incredibly disproportionate. but obviously I am in the minority there because everybody in the arena fucking loved it. And I was once again left thinking that like Mero could be a good heel if he just had something to bitch about other than Sable. Ryan, what did you think of all this?
I loved when Mark started busting on Sal for being a jabroni. That was just great because I remembered doing the research for Sal way back and, hitting that point where Mark Mero, of all people, is is calling someone else a jobber. So that was exciting to get to. I thought Sable coming down on the potato sack, I thought that was a pretty good call on their part. I thought it was a good segment. When the potato sack comes off, this is probably the most revealing thing we've seen to date by anyone on Raw. Well, maybe we had two tonight. We had Shawn jiggling his package in his boxers, and then Sable in basically pasties. She has a couple pieces of vinyl that cover her nipples and another one that covers her vagina. Other than that, everything else was exposed here. And, Bartlett, like you said about like just how she looks, it's like an anime character, how disproportionate she is, to be honest. It's like, I don't know. I wouldn't go so far as to say like completely unappealing. It's just weird looking in an anime way.
Yeah, I think that, obviously the purpose of this entire thing was to get Sable's gimmicks out there on TV and in front of this crowd, which was loving it. I don't know. I look at it from this perspective that, now in 2024, like you can pick up your phone and fucking just go to Pornhub and see whatever the hell you want.
Right.
Or OnlyFans or whatever, Instagram. But like back then, I didn't have... I had the internet, but I also had 3 siblings that I had to share it with. It was dial-up internet. So I'm seeing this.
Janeway,
like, holy
waiting
shit.
for that picture to load.
I remember I recorded this. This was one of the Raws that I recorded back in the day on VHS, and I wore out that ribbon on the tape. This was exciting at that time period, so I guess that's what I will say about that. And it's funny how now you don't hear, just listening to the commentary from 1997 when this is happening, like, you're not going to hear that stuff now. It's so funny how, like, she's so hot, she's so sexy. Like, you're not going to hear that now, and it's funny. That's part of why this is, like, kind of weird to watch now, going back and looking at
25 years later.
Yeah, those things being out, that's just adding to the attitude of this entire episode, really.
Yeah, it's kind of a shocker in hindsight to look and see how many of these fans were apparently just desperately thirsty to see anything they could. And I'm not saying that I was necessarily above that as a teenager in the 90s.
You're talking about a bunch of kids going through puberty here.
I was popping my ass off for Sonny, and I guess maybe we could just say that I'm more of a total package guy. I need my eye candy to have a little bit of talent at least, and
even
not
when you were
quite
15.
So much.
Yeah, when I was 15, I wasn't all that picky.
Yeah, right. Like,
I distinctly remember never finding Sable appealing. Never.
Well, that's why you loved that DX pay-per-view so much too. You're one of the 11%ers.
Yeah, I am.
Did you get that patch yet? 11%er?
No, not yet. Still on order.
Have to get that made up for you for Christmas.
Yeah.
All right. So, even though that was the last match of the evening, the show was not over yet. Let's not forget that there's still that question of the Intercontinental title match that Vince McMahon tried to insist upon earlier tonight.
And we're definitely going to get that. That's not a bait and switch, right? We're getting the match.
No, definitely.
No, we actually start to get that going here. The Rock comes out, and Vince McMahon and a whole host of officials were out along with him in anticipation of trouble. The glass does break, and Austin does come out, but JR notes for us that Austin's not wearing his wrestling gear. Austin refuses to wrestle, and then challenges Vince to try to enforce some kind of consequence on that refusal. The Rock chimes in to say that Vince should fire Austin, drawing a "you stay out of this" from Vince, and I popped there. I loved that. Vince does say that he's being forced to strip the title from Austin, which, of course, Austin takes umbrage about, but then Austin surprises me, saying that he's not going to wrestle. He's going to be more focused on the WWF Championship, and he's actually willing to forfeit the Intercontinental title to The Rock. Austin does hand over the title, but it's a swerve, bro, as The Rock ends up with a stunner for his troubles. And Austin finishes it by saying he's got plans for that IC belt, but they don't have anything to do with wrestling. And if anyone wants to see it, they need to keep tuning in. Same Stone Cold time, same Stone Cold channel. Some confusion does remain, though, as Stone Cold did technically forfeit the title, but then took it back, so we're not really sure what's going on there quite yet. Stone Cold ends up doing some rope work and knocks Vince McMahon off the ring apron. Vince bumping for us here. And that is where things fade to black. So, guys, this is the kind of show finish that we need to get used to. There's going to be less matches ending in clusterfucks and more of these like story-driven finishes, the kind that are like a wrestling version of a cliffhanger here. And while I was entertained by the whole deal, I did kind of think that Stone Cold telling people to keep tuning in was kind of cheap. That sounds like something that Vince insisted that Austin say. So, Ryan, what'd you think about the way Raw ended tonight here?
I highly enjoyed the way things ended here. You know, Stone Cold coming out in his regular clothes and Vince confronting him about it and telling him he's going to strip the title. And then Stone Cold saying, if you take it from my hands, I'll kick your ass. And then Vince gave him a look like, remember what I said about how lucky Bret Hart was? Like, it was just hilarious the way Vince made this face like, oh, don't make me get mad, you know, like, whatever. I did love the whole end of this, though. Stone Cold saying, whatever, I don't care about the IC belt. I'm going after the heavyweight belt. I'll forfeit it. Hands it over to The Rock. Stunner there. And then cherry on the top, knocking Vince off the fucking apron onto the ground. Just all around fucking fantastic segment that I loved. You said we're going to the more story-driven cliffhanger ends to Raw, and, you know, Stone Cold really drove that home with the Batman cliffhanger, same Stone Cold time, same Stone Cold place, you know. It was a little bit heavy-handed, but whatever, it worked. And a great segment. Way to go, Stone Cold. I mean, we have The Rock, Stone Cold, and Vince McMahon, and, well, I guess Mr. McMahon here in the ring. I mean, how could things go wrong?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this episode is fantastic. This is a great finish, because some finishes have been pretty sloppy the past couple months, but this was amazing. I mean, we are balls deep in the Attitude Era now. There's no doubt about it.
Oh yeah.
This is it. And we're getting Steve Austin and Vince McMahon twice in one episode facing each other, which is great. And then, like you said, Ryan, you got The Rock in there too, and the chemistry between all three of these guys is just, it's lighting up the screen already, and we're just getting started. I mean, even the chemistry between Vince and The Rock, you can already see like that corporation forming, and we're so far away from that. But really good stuff, really good timing and delivery from everybody. Even on the segment earlier in the show with Vince and Steve, just the timing and delivery, like it looks so real. It doesn't look scripted. It doesn't look rehearsed. You know, it just looks so real. Just their delivery, and I really enjoy watching it. We're on a pretty good ride here right now, and hopefully the Raws moving forward are going to be just like this one.
Yep, agreed. This is 10 times more entertaining than pretty much every finish for the past couple months that I can think of. Like I said, we faded to black, so let's take it on over to highlights and lowlights. Joe, why don't you take that first?
Well, frankly, it's hard to pick a highlight. But I will go with the two segments with Vince McMahon and Stone Cold Steve Austin, mainly because, you know, this is like the first time we've seen Mr. McMahon in front of a live crowd, so I thought that was really great. Low light for me is the sludge that we talked about earlier with Flash Funk and Kurgan in a match, and I guess the debut of Kurgan was just not very good.
Yeah, we're going to line up pretty closely without being exactly the same. My highlight is just the final segment in general with Rock, Vince, and Stone Cold. I thought just everything about this worked, and this is how we want to see Raw end. Not with some shitty schmoz between a bunch of people we don't give a fuck about. And my low light is everything to do with Kurgan. His match, the Jackal, just everything about him sucks. He's the low light.
Yeah. So we're going to differ on highlights here. That's not to say that I did not enjoy Stone Cold, The Rock, Vince McMahon. Whenever I see them coming out, I expect to enjoy that. I know I'm going to enjoy it. But the Road Dogg, on the other hand, he surprised me tonight whenever he was on commentary. Absolutely the highlight for me because of how surprisingly awesome that was to hear. Entertained the hell out of me. I loved it. Low light, though, 3 for 3, because while this was hard, there were a couple of strong contenders for me. I definitely ended up settling on the Kurgan and the Jackal simply because fuck them. Yeah, we don't need to go any farther than that. Joseph, you wouldn't happen to have any contemporary wrestling news from on and around December 8th that you may have tickled my taint with, do you?
Yes, the taint tickling is over. I will give you the news from the Observer here.
You
guys are not gonna believe this, but there's more news about Bret Hart. I know that's shocking.
What?
Yeah. Actually, really on the Hart family in general. So Dave Meltzer is reporting that Owen Hart is getting a huge raise to return, so good for him. He's at least getting money for being held hostage here. Jim Neidhart is leaving for WCW. Sorry to report that.
Surprised they were interested, as was pointed out by Dave.
Well, maybe not. I don't know. British Bulldog, Vince McMahon has supposedly awarded British Bulldog some sort of escape clause. So if he wants out, he is free to go. So we'll have to stay tuned there. Vince McMahon is also threatening Bret Hart with a lawsuit for wrongful interference with contracted personnel. So I would assume that means Owen Hart. We'll have to keep an eye on that as well. We know that Vince is very Sue happy, so we'll see what happens there. Bret Hart recently did a Prodigy online chat.
Prodigy.
And some notes from that were the following. He thought that Jim Neidhart made a mistake in judgment in going along with the angles in his final 2 weeks in the WWF. Bret Hart thanked Mick Foley for his show of defiance in missing the Ottawa show and said that he received calls from several other wrestlers in support. He went on to bury the living shit out of Earl Hebner, and I'm not going to read that entire thing, but it is quite a long paragraph. If anybody wants to read that, it's on the Observer.
I just remember seeing an interview of him talking about it. And this was a more recent one where he's toned down, kind of saying that he forgives Earl Hebner, but just the way he words it and Earl's a weak and pathetic man.
Yes.
Well, he had no choice because he's just so weak and pathetic.
Yes. And almost like a surprise. Like, I can't believe how weak and pathetic he is. Yeah, it's pretty entertaining. He also claimed that he would not let his kids watch Raw anymore since Vince McMahon did the Melanie Pillman interview the day after Brian's death. So that was the final straw for Bret letting his kids watch Raw. And lastly, he compared the WWF having his brother Owen do an angle based on Bret's final match in the WWF to a pimp forcing someone into prostitution.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow. Man, that couldn't come at a better time right now.
So so that's pretty rough. Speaking of Canada, TSN in Canada refused to air the Goldust and Luna interview from the December 1st Raw show, which we remember very well.
Yeah.
They are not degenerates in Canada. Brett tried to tell us how many times.
Yeah.
That's right.
So did the week before, did we get the Canadian cut?
Oh, yeah.
No, I think they're talking about the interview in the ring with the ball gag.
Well, right,
and stuff
right. No,
that,
I know that, but I'm saying the week before that. Remember, we were missing a segment they said that we saw.
Yeah,
I wondered.
Maybe.
I wondered if
the
that
alcohol
was
in the eye.
Right. I wonder if that was the Canadian cut.
Maybe. Yeah. Some news on Sergeant Slaughter. Dave Meltzer seems to think that the Sergeant Slaughter commissioner role has been dropped.
Okay.
Since his character was too cartoonish for more serious and edgy direction the company is going.
I mean, he was the authority figure, and they punked him out like a bitch, removing any authority he may have had. So,
right.
Including having one of the members of DX continuously talk about having sex with his wife.
Right.
Yeah.
And also going in there and destroying his 50-year-old overweight, out-of-shape body.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
And maybe wind up in a hospital. So, last piece of news here is for any video game fans out there. The first licensed Nintendo 64 wrestling game has been released just in time for the Christmas season. It is not WWF, though. It is WCW NWO World Tour.
Yeah, I remember that one.
This was released by THQ in North America on December 2nd, 1997. World Tour introduced the grappling system, in which all moves are started by holds, and it ended up being the second best-selling Nintendo 64 wrestling game, just behind WCW NWO Revenge, which was released the following year in 1998. So Nintendo 64 getting into the wrestling game world here in December 97, and that is all.
All right. Thank you, Joseph. Illuminating as always. Yeah, that's the grapple button combo in wrestling games. That's a solid mechanic. And I didn't know that was invented that early on.
Yeah, I know that WWF No Mercy was the game that people still really talk about loving
We
back in the
were
day.
just playing that not too long ago, me and Bartlett, on my PS2.
Yeah.
So this was the start for THQ with those wrestling games, so pretty exciting stuff.
And I just want to, we won't get into it here, but I just want to throw this out there because of the weird timing of everything. Right now, this is, early February of 2024, and there's certain news out there about Vince McMahon and what's going on.
And others.
And like I said, I won't get into specifics, but it's just so strange having this stuff coming to light now while we're just starting the Attitude Era and all of the TNA and all of the extreme degeneracy going on our screens.
Like this is the beginning of Vince's downward spiral.
The wrestling business is a 25-year cycle, and we've come full circle. Vince is the only person on TV that's entertaining right now.
Well, and speaking of recent news, on top of that, included with it, Sable might be single here soon. If you're looking for something, Bartlett.
Well, 11% asshole. So that actually made me think of, while we were talking about it earlier in the episode, Sable's sexual harassment lawsuits against Vince McMahon in the early 2000s. Puts a whole new spin on that.
Certainly.
Well, it's interesting too. It's ironic that all that money that Vince paid to do his degenerate acts, he made that money really during this time period where he was having people be degenerates and have attitude. So, it's ironic how that works out.
Yeah, the Attitude Era built up the IP before they went public.
Yeah.
If it wasn't for all of this, they wouldn't have got that huge stock offering at the start.
No, this was the push.
The extra cheese.
It all owes to Vince McMahon's degeneracy. I seriously doubt we'll dwell much more on that in the future. I just couldn't pass up the opportunity to mention it, though. Like I said, the timing is ridiculous. So, all right, guys, that's it, folks. We are done with this one. I want to thank you again for joining us. If you like what we're doing here and want to connect with us, you can email us at WRASSLINRAW. Just add @gmail.com to the end of that to submit questions or comments. Check us out on social media and on every podcast subscription platform. While you're there, don't forget to follow and subscribe to get every episode of Wrasslin Raw coming to you every week. Give us a 5-star review and tell all of your friends to tune in to the most indecent Monday Night Raw review podcast on the airwaves. Next week on Wrasslin Raw, we're going to take a look at the Raw that aired on December 15th, 1997, with matches featuring The Sultan, Mark Henry, and many more. So, for Joe and Ryan, I'm Jason, and this has been Wrasslin Raw.